Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. Today's conversation is one of those that stays with you because betrayal is one of those experiences we all think we understand until it happens to us. My guest today is Vanessa Cardenas, a betrayal recovery specialist, relationship reset coach, speaker, and author who doesn't just teach betrayal recovery, she lived it. And after discovering betrayal in her own marriage of decades, Vanessa found herself quite literally on the floor, shattered, and in that moment received a message that would change everything: help someone else. What followed was a profound healing journey, deep research into why betrayal hurts differently than grief, and a calling to help others not only survive betrayal, but rebuild trust, intimacy, confidence, and self respect from the inside out. Vanessa works with individuals, couples, and organizations, helping people navigate everything from micro betrayals and communication breakdowns to infidelity, identity loss, and relational resets. And yes, she and her husband are still married, which makes this conversation even more powerful. This is a conversation about healing out loud, the language we use in relationships, why confidence, love it, is the sexiest thing in the room, and how betrayal, when faced consciously, can actually crack you open into your fullest potential. So let's dive in, Vanessa. I love all of this about you. You have so much wisdom to share with us. So we're just going to start right now with a question. It's completely random. What beliefs do you have today that you just couldn't even think about having 20 years ago?
Oh, well, 20 years ago was the 30s for me. And,
Yeah.
I'm going to say my 30s were really challenging. They absolutely were. 50? Oh, 50s are great. They
I
absolutely
know.
are. So, what mindset did I have in my 30s that today I can't even believe I actually had it. And I'm going to say never. And I say that meaning this. I never thought my husband would do the actions that he did. Never, never
Mm.
thought. I mean, I was emphatic that we had the epic love story. We were the model for all of our friends and family and uh, poster child for a good, strong, solid marriage. He'd never.
Yeah.
Woo. And now the word never doesn't come out of my mouth. Not at
I love
all.
that.
Not at all. Never and always, those are two words. And
Yeah.
third one is fine. Not a big proponent of fine either.
You know what
So,
that stands for, right?
what do you?
Well, I, in 12-step programs, fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. That's
Mm,
fine.
yeah,
Just
I
a
would say
different
so.
way to look.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's
People
a
use
very
that
dangerous word
very much so.
in
Yeah.
texting
Oh,
because you
yeah.
don't know the tone by which it's
Right.
said. So,
Right.
do you want to go out for Mexican food for dinner? Fine. And then fine, fine.
Right.
We have no idea. So yeah, I stay away from that word as well. But yeah, between my 30s and my 50s, the word never. Because
Yeah.
there were things that in my 30s, I thought I would never do. I never thought I would get on stage with a microphone. I could barely get three words out to two people at a time. I was
Yeah.
always in the background. Oh, no, no, no. Now you get a mic in my hand, you're going to have to
I
pry it
know.
out of my hands. Yes, absolutely. So
My
if you
cold,
told me
dead hand.
if you told me in my 30s that I would be on stage at Oxford University or Columbia University
Yeah.
or this coming summer at Harvard, no way. No.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
I
love that
am,
because There's so many women that listen to this podcast. Most of them are midlife. I was calculating the other day, midlife is 45, which seems really young to some people. To me it does. And yet, when you just talked about the gap of 20 years, what can transpire in our lives in 20 years and how we believe so differently comes from wisdom, comes from living on the planet. And so you have been through some stuff. We're here to talk your journey, how you transmuted that, how you alchemized that into who you are today. So let's talk about your own personal betrayal, when that started, what happened, and how you did really transmute that. You alchemized it into something. And I'm not talking about resilient. I'm talking about you completely transformed who you are.
Well, first, I needed to introduce myself to
Sure.
myself. I needed to
Yeah.
understand like who I actually was, because my identity was wrapped up in being a wife and a mother and a worker and a boss and a leader and all these titles that I had.
Yeah.
I lost sight of like who I am. Who am I? And I, through the betrayal, for me, the betrayal hit me really hard. And I didn't understand why at the time. And it took a while for me to get it. Was all the micro betrayals I had had throughout my entire life that
Mm,
reinforced my insecurities. And I had so many insecurities. And I did. And it
mhm,
was just this person from, this moment in time made this crack about me, or this situation happened. And all these little micro betrayals that everybody around me was like, oh, why are you letting that bother you? That's nothing. And I would sweep those all under the rug.
mhm,
Well, when you have a catastrophic
mhm,
betrayal, you rip off. You take that rug and you just whip it out, and all those insecurities came flooding back. And that was something for me to have to work on, and for me to clean up, to face them, to finally have the language to be able to understand that when I was 5 years old and my kindergarten teacher stuck her finger in my face and told me that I was a smartass, and I stopped talking for
mm,
years after that, to recognize that that was a betrayal, that somebody that I looked up to, an adult that I was so excited to be in kindergarten. And she put her finger in my face and said those words to me that birthed my inner critic. And my inner critic was vicious and would tell me, don't talk. Nobody cares what you have to say. And I
mhm,
believed that, not for weeks, not for months, years, decades.
mhm,
I had that nasty chick on my shoulder telling me all dreadful things. And it wasn't until I had this betrayal, this catastrophic betrayal, that cracked all of it open, that I recognized that I now had the language and I had knowledge to start working on those and start cleaning those up, because it was those little itty bitty ones that started stacking up that caused me so much pain. And it was because of the adults in my life that were dismissive of those things in my
mhm,
childhood. And I needed to come to grips and peace with them myself. I also needed to forgive those that said it to me, including my mother. And my mother was the hardest one for me to wrap around.
mm,
And it wasn't until I recognized that she was a terrified teenager when I was
mhm,
born. She wasn't equipped to be a parent. She needed a parent. And funny enough, I actually became a parent to her, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. I was caretaking her.
mhm,
And when I was able to turn the kaleidoscope just 1 degree and see the pattern differently and make that connection that, wait a second, my mother was not equipped to be a parent. So what she told me in first and second grade about other kids teasing me mercilessly. Mercilessly?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Mercilessly.
mercilessly. And just, I mean, uh, when I had that epiphany, that moment of recognizing that, I could forgive her. And once I could forgive her, I could forgive myself. And I needed to forgive myself because I was ridiculously hard on myself. Again, that inner critic, oh, telling me all kinds of things. And I had to work on that as well to get my inner
Yeah.
critic to start quieting down because she was bullying my intuition and my gut, which they disappeared. They went into hibernation for decades because she was taking over.
I'm picturing an animated book of our intuition and our gut and the inner critic, the bully, just duking it out. Like that is such a visceral image. And yet we as women do that so much to ourselves. So even though it may be a micro betrayal or it may not be a betrayal that we perceive as a typical betrayal, a partnership relationship, how do you start working with women and get them into a place of safety where they can begin to look at their experiences in this way that you just described? Because that's not an easy process. People could hear this and go, that sounds really good for her, but I don't know. What is some of the ways that you are able to help women transition or navigate this?
I'm going to work backwards because
Sure.
your book idea is great. And what I love about it is it goes in line with an advanced technique that I use. When women find themselves in a position of safety, of slowing everything down, of having some clarity in their story, because we get locked into our story and it
Yep.
becomes glue. It becomes glue, and we can't shake from it. We can't bend from it. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity. No, no, not at all. But one of the techniques that I use, and it usually gets a giggle, if I could be so bold, is think of your problem, your situation, your story, your inner critic, any of the four, as a gremlin, this little itty bitty figure that sits in the corner and has a flashlight, a really big flashlight. And what they do is they turn it on and point it at themselves. So it casts this huge shadow behind them. Okay. Do you have that visual? Do you see that?
Yep.
Do you see that little gremlin just holding that flashlight and just
Yep.
ready, ready? And you see that image. And I suggest to the women, turn off the flashlight.
Yeah.
And it suddenly dawns on them that what they're holding on to is casting the shadow. It's
Yep.
bigger because their imagination and their minds can make it bigger. Let's look at it for exactly what it is. And I use the technique of a kaleidoscope because a kaleidoscope, again, has a beautiful pattern to it when you look through it, but you turn it 1 degree, it doesn't make it ugly. No, not at all. It just
No.
changes it ever so slightly. 1 degree. 1 degree can make a difference. A lot of clients come in and I just want to feel 100% better. Mm, Let's get you to 1%. Let's start with 1% because that 1%, just like those micro betrayals stack up, those 1 degrees of feeling a little better each and every time, those start to stack. And before you know it, you look back and you realize how far you've come. And again, between the 30 and the 50, for me, when I was in my 50s, because I'm in my 50s again and again and again and again, I look back at my 30s and it is so far back. And I cannot believe the woman that I am today. Had you
Yeah.
told me in my 30s that I would be where I am at this moment, no way.
Hmm.
No way. I
Exactly.
would not have believed you.
I love that so much because the book, The Gap and the Gain, but we do spend a lot of time in our gaps instead of that gain. At 20 years, just to look back 10 years, look back 5 years, we can then see in perspective what we've been through brought us to where we are. So talk about that from where you were when you learned that your husband had cheated on you to going to I'm not going to give away your story, to a group, and then how that transpired so that you became who you are today, because it is such a beautiful story and I want everybody to hear it.
Well, I found myself laying on my bedroom floor,
Yeah.
asking God's source spirit for a reprieve of
Hmm.
how awful I felt. And I heard it like a thunderbolt, no mistaking it. You have to help someone else. And I got angry. No, 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 no. You're not listening to me. I need the help. Second time I heard it, same words. You have to help someone else. I found myself so angry. And I crying, that ugly crying, please, I need the help. Please help me. Third time I heard it, you have to help someone else. And I relented. Okay, fine. I'll help someone else. And I was angry, but I finally fell asleep. I slept. I didn't have this grand epiphany or anything of that sort. But the next morning I woke up and I felt a little better, just 1 degree, because now I had purpose and I sought out a group. I sought out, I needed help. I needed help. And there weren't betrayal groups. No, I found a grief group. But this was a form of grief, at least I thought so,
Yep.
and whatnot. And I met the most amazing woman, great mentor. Um, we lost her during COVID. She was an amazing woman. And I, shy, in the background, wicked inner critic telling me, yeah, no, don't say anything. You don't need to tell people your story. They don't care, type of thing. But in a support group, they encourage you to talk.
Yep.
They do. And finally, someone, called me out and said, Vanessa, we don't know anything about you. Share your story. And I remember standing at that podium shaking. I mean, I was visibly shaking because I had never spoken to more than 2 or 3 people at a time. And now I'm up in front of a room having to speak and share my story. But as it started to tumble out of my mouth, what I felt was just a release of it all. And the tears started streaming, and I realized how beneficial it was to share my story. And over the course of weeks, months, I became the unofficial ambassador for the group. Everybody reached out to me at all hours of the night. This was before cell phones were really a thing. They were, but every time you needed to text, you had to hit the number, 3 times to get to the
25
letter.
times.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And but I learned a lot. I studied a lot. I really got into the depths of grief and betrayal because now suddenly it started to shift into a betrayal group. And this amazing mentor pulled me aside one day and said, Vanessa, you're being selfish. And I took offense to that. What do you mean I'm being selfish? She says, hold on. You're just helping the 11 other people in this room. You need to write a book. A book? No way am I writing. I'm not sharing my story. You need to be on podcast. No way. Did you see me the first time I had to share my story? You want me to talk on podcast? And then she says, and you need to be on stage. Stage? Like, what are you doing? No, no. And she was the one that really encouraged me. And she sponsored me to learn with the greats for betrayal and get really dive deep into it. And I am so grateful for her. She was absolutely amazing for me. And I have the opportunity to move that forward. And I'm ridiculously proud of where I am in my marriage because we have now celebrated 35 years of being married. Yes, it has an asterisk next to it, which symbolizes, but wait, there's more to the story.
More.
But I learned something, and the first time it was said to me, I brushed it off. And the second time it was said right at the right moment. And you know that. Sometimes you'll hear things, you'll hear nuggets, and yeah, okay. But when you hear it a second time, you know that you need to pay attention to it. And what was said to me was, Vanessa, you're going to have a new relationship. You're a different person.
Mm.
Your husband is a different person. You get to choose the next relationship you have. And that was really powerful for me. The first time I heard it, I dismissed it. But the second time, because by that time, some duration of time had passed between the initial betrayal and all the work that we both were doing. And I was seeing that his actions and his words were lining up. And therefore, I had the opportunity to choose him.
Mm.
We are now in a new relationship. It is not the same as it was
Right.
before betrayal. It is
Right.
completely different because we are two completely different people,
Yeah.
for which I am grateful.
That is so powerful because I actually interviewed somebody right before this afternoon, and she came out of a domestic violence experience. So, there are so many ways that relationships can um, build our character, can be built on each other's character, and there is not one way. That's what I love about this, that you had what we perceive as women, one of the greatest betrayals that we can have. And yet there is that space for forgiveness, which is what you talked about with so many different parts of these microaggressions. And the one thing that I love so much that you shared when you got this download that said, go be of service, right? Go help somebody else. I remember being in 12-step programs, and that's anytime anybody got in a funk, it's like, go help another person because we can't be in our own shit and help somebody else and stay in it. It's basically virtually impossible. So those two nuggets are just so resonant for what I love for women to hear here is that nothing is carved in stone. You had such an amazing experience through all of it. And now look at what's happened to this relationship. It's beautiful. It's new. It's gorgeous. And so that's beautiful. Now let's talk about your books because you did write a book, even though you were scared, which is hard to believe because I see women all the time that I'm interviewing and they explain to me they're like these little mouses and then they show up on my screen and it's like hard to believe. And yet I know it's true. So tell me about that book because she suggested that to you. And then what happened after that? How did you say, okay, I think I'll do that?
I approached it as the book that I needed because when initially I went through the betrayal and my husband said those three words, I've met someone, I, s- I was always a student. I had a psychology degree. I pulled out all my textbooks and I went to Barnes and Noble and, went to the self-help, section and pretty much, cleared them out
Oh,
of any books that they had. And there weren't
yeah.
very many related to betrayal, maybe one, maybe two, but a lot related to grief. So I read a lot about grief, and it's different. It is different. I do have to put a little disclaimer on that. And I realized that I was really struggling reading all of this material. There was so much scientific jargon. There was so much
Mhm.
religious jargon. There was so much blame jargon. And I really struggled with that because I wanted to read something that explained it in a way that I could understand it in clear language, not long chapters, and that would end on a note that I could hold on to, that I could grasp and say, okay, I can fall asleep to this thought rather than
Mhm.
going down the ruminating thoughts and the whys and everything else. I would have a question to end with, end a chapter with. So I designed my book specifically to have very short chapters. They're 1 or 2 pages at the very most, maybe 3. And they end with a journal prompt. They end with a question for you to think about related to the material you just read, because the attention span when you have such trauma is so tiny. Even though we're searching for answers everywhere, we can't retain it because
Mhm.
it's too much, it's flooding in too fast. But I wanted that opportunity to support others that have been through betrayal to know they can pick up my book, and whatever they're going through at that moment, there's a chapter for it. They don't have to read it from 1 to 26 chapters. They don't have to read it in order. They skip around. Absolutely, because whatever you're going through at that moment, that's what you need help with.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I struggled with programs,
Hmm.
therapy programs or coaching programs, a 12-week program. And this week we're going to cover this, and next week we're going to cover that, and week 8 we're going to cover this. Because I would come with something that was distressing to me and I wanted help related to it.
Right.
And the reply that oh, we're going to cover that in week 7. And we're in week 2. No, I can't wait 5 weeks to resolve this. I need
Yep,
help
I get it
now. So
now.
my book was written not for academic success, not for commercial success,
Right.
a calling card, a book to be able to say, hey, I see you. I hear you. I understand what you're going through. And here is a simplistic analysis of what you are experiencing right at this moment. Here's a couple of techniques, again,
Hmm.
that might help with how you are feeling. And here is a final question for you to ruminate on. Ruminate on this question rather than ruminating on your story. It'll
Right.
help move things along, because what happens is we have an avalanche of emotions that
Hmm.
knock us, our ecosystem, off tilter. And what winds up happening is they get trapped. And
Hmm.
this, our ecosystem, becomes a coffin for all of
Hmm.
those emotions. I don't want that for anyone. I absolutely
Yeah.
don't. And the feedback that I got from my book was, well, how do I talk to my kids and my parents and my in laws and my friends and my colleagues? And that prompted my second book, which was
Hmm.
exactly that, how to talk to the variety of people in your life. Because, yes, they mean well. They absolutely mean well. They want the best for you, but they say the worst things to you. They mean
Hmm.
no harm. They don't mean any harm. But sometimes their words, oh, they sting just as much as your initial betrayal or all the micro betrayals you have had throughout your entire life. We don't want to stack more on there. So the
Right.
book, the second book, was how to talk, how to say what you need to say so that people understand and can be helpful.
I don't think we talked about that book. I love that whole concept of having a book where people. I used to teach communication to leaders, and communication is such a challenging uh, experience for anybody, especially if they feel that there's any kind of confrontation, or they feel like they're betrayed, or they're just misunderstood. So, give me a couple of examples that you used in that book, just so that people can um, latch on to that and possibly go get that book, because I think I want to go get it. I love the idea of different ways of communicating with people in scenarios that we don't typically think of.
Well, the most powerful one and the one that gets the most feedback is talking to schools, because your children are in
Mm,
schools and
wow.
they're starting to talk to their peers, and they're starting to talk to
Right.
their teachers, and different age groups talk to their teachers and their guidance counselors and their principals. And you'd be surprised, most of the time the school already knows what's going on in your household before you've even had an opportunity to talk to them, where they're calling you in and going, hey, know something's going on in your family. So I encourage that when there's challenges within the family that pretty much the first ones you talk to are your school's guidance counselor and
Mhm.
teachers. They have experience with this. They can help your child through this, all the emotions that they're having, because children, they take it on. They feel
Yeah.
responsible for the challenges in the family. They feel like they're not good enough. You don't want that for your child. You absolutely don't want that. So one of
Yeah.
the conversations that I encourage right out of the gate is speaking to the school.
Yeah.
Then in talking to anyone else, I really strongly encourage, and I know this is hard for women. I know it's really challenging. It was challenging for me. And a lot of the women in my support group, oh, they struggled with this one as well. Don't badmouth your partner. I
Hmm.
know that he hurt you immensely, and you just want to scream it from the mountaintops, and you want to take a Louisville slugger to both headlights, and you want to key his car, and you want to do all this because you have so much emotion going on. But bad mouthing, there's no coming back from it.
Yeah.
And once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't get it back in.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
really control your tongue. You can have a select one or two people. I encourage it to be a therapist or a coach where you let all that out. You let all that rage out and call them every name in the book, absolutely, and whatnot. But if there is any hope for either reconciliation or an amicable break, an amicable divorce, an amicable separation, you're not going to want to have that be in the
Yeah.
middle.
Plus, you don't want it for your kids. I mean, it's so interesting how we we say so many things, especially I think in this culture of social media, that people have lost all filters. I used to say I lived in California when I grew up, and it was way before the internet, and there were drive-by shootings, right? Or people would flip you off while you're driving a car. And I'd say, you would never do that to somebody in the bank. Nowadays, I think they would do those things to the people in the bank. So it's really it's very sage wisdom to talk about
Yeah.
how we want to hold back on some of our conversations. Absolutely, on the internet as well. So
Yeah.
what tell me what you're doing today. How are you
Oh, what am
serving the world? How are you serving the world? What are your programs that all of us can find you with and connect with you? Because it really is such a deep, deep topic. And I know that there are people experiencing this kind of pain that didn't even realize that there was an outlet for them. I mean, I didn't know it until we spoke. I think this is just brilliant.
Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of programs. I know a lot of business gurus come at me and like,
Yep,
"Oh,
that's
you have
fine.
to do a program, you have to do a program." And I resist. And there's a reason that I resist because I went through programs and they were ridiculously expensive and I found myself being underserved, overpromised and underdelivered. And I really struggle with that. And I don't subscribe to that. So for me, it's working one-on-one with me
Hmm.
directly.
Hmm.
And I'm a little unconventional in that my initial sessions are 90 minutes with an hour buffer to go an extra hour. And usually, I'm going to say about 90% of the time, we do go an extra hour. So
Hmm.
2.5 hours of our initial conversation gives clients the opportunity to get it up and out, to be heard,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
have that release of all that emotion
Yeah.
and slow it all down so that we can come up with solutions that feel right, things that we can try, that we can explore. Because as you mentioned, every single relationship is completely unique. Unique is your fingerprint.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I prefer to get in there with my clients so that they know that I have a vested interest in whatever decision they decide. And that decision doesn't come initially. That comes 6, 7, 10 sessions down the road when they have the clarity to be able to make decisions related to their relationships. So I appreciate working one on one with clients. Not everybody is ready for that, and I understand that. So, as you mentioned, I do have my book. I do write on both Substack and Medium. I have over 100 articles. So you can find
Yeah.
my theories and my thoughts on a variety of topics so that you get to know me. My
Right.
digital footprint is pretty massive actually, because
Yeah.
I've been the best kept secret in my area since
Amazing.
2017, until somebody nominated me as best relationship coach for Westchester County, New York, and I won it in 2025. So suddenly I was no longer the best kept
Yay.
secret. So yes, um, and it was very bittersweet because more people found me, which means more people are
Yeah.
hurting. And people are hurting. I get that. I know that. I can feel it when I walk into a room. I can pretty much, before I'm introduced, I can pretty much determine who's struggling just
Hmm.
based on their body language and how either close they are to each other or how far apart they actually are. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things I do in my office is I don't have a couch in my office. I have a love seat. So
Oh,
it encourages, because there's nowhere
hmm,
else to sit next to each other. And sometimes when we're sitting shoulder to shoulder, we don't have that confrontation
hmm,
facing each other.
right.
And that's really important for couples working through relationship hardships. And I hope to get them before
Right.
betrayal
Yeah.
seeps in, that they recognize, and this is a lot of the education that I do. You mentioned you're educating as well, that I educate couples on those cracks that start to
Yeah.
form. And let's start mending those cracks before something digital or someone makes their way in.
Yeah. So I want you to talk about that a little bit as well, because that's how we were talking about that during the pre-call, is that you do work with couples or individuals, but that is a really great incubator, as you said, to be preemptive to anything that could happen. Because you know this, and I'm not sharing anything that anybody doesn't know that's listening to this. There's always telltale signs that things are not what we believe they should be in a relationship. And it's so important for us to take steps, if we really are committed to our relationships, to seek this kind of assistance out. This is so supportive, and it's not marriage counseling, right? It's coaching, which is a whole different dynamic. So I want you to share a little bit about the differences for those people that are thinking, well, I just go to marriage counseling. That's not what this is. This is really something much, much deeper than that, and it's healing this relationship. So share your insights to what that looks like.
Yeah, that's really, really important. I definitely stay in my lane for coaching. And every once in a while, if I'm at a networking event or a speaking event, I'll have a therapist come up to me afterwards and kind of want to pick my brain as to why I do things the way I do, which is absolutely fine. But I have found that therapy for couples beneficial. I'm not crapping on therapy. It is definitely beneficial. I like working in conjunction with therapy because for coaching, it's present day. What are we
Yeah.
dealing with today? And what can we do moving forward so that today doesn't have that impact like the past does? I'm not going to dig through your past and your childhood and your patterns and all of that other stuff because you're not living back there. You're
Right.
living today. You want help now. We might touch on a little bit of what's going on in the past. And if it's something monumental, then I'll refer you out to therapy to work on that
Right.
independently because that's something independent of your marriage. Coaching, there still is a little bit of a stigma for marriage therapy because it sounds like we have a problem
Right.
and it becomes bigger, again, the flashlight with the gremlin,
Hmm.
bigger than it actually might actually be. So coaching is, here we are, we're here in the present moment. What's coming up? Oh, he's not taking out the garbage. Well, that's on the surface. What
Right.
does that mean underneath it? That you're not being valued? And it's not that I give the answers, absolutely not, but
Right.
we explore
Or
what actually is it, what's kind of coming up for you. And I ask a lot of powerful questions to my clients to get them thinking and responding very quickly, because usually the first response that flies out of their mouth is very indicative of exactly what is going on, so that we can address it and we can have language to it. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. I had just recently a couple came into my office sitting next to each other on my love seat, and she couldn't wait to tell me. Like she just couldn't wait. And before I start my sessions, we usually do a breathing exercise just to get everybody settled into the office, into the environment, just to breathe. And she couldn't wait for us to finish breathing before she just, ugh. And she says, we sat on the couch last night, we were watching a movie, and I turned to him and I asked him, how come you don't hold me anymore? And I was so taken back because we had been working for a couple of weeks now. And I said, wait a second, did you say it just like that? And he's sitting there nodding. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's take a breath. Let's think about what you just said. I said that automatically, it made me defensive. I'm sure it made him defensive. I said, so let's change it up a little bit. How about if you leaned into him, and if he put his arm around you or put his hand, on your knee, or made some sort of gesture, that you would say, I like this. I miss this. I said, it's 6 words. It gets your point across. You like it and you miss it. That's it. Nothing else needs to be said. Because when you start a sentence with, how come you? It immediately gets people
exactly.
defensive. So let's change our
Yeah.
language so that we have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So a
That's
lot of it
beautiful.
is about a lot of it is about our communication style, because we
Oh,
grow
definitely.
comfortable. We do over time, and we suddenly become, dare I say, mind readers. Oh, well, he's going to say
No.
this, and she's going to say
hmm
that, and it's like, how do you know that? Oh, well, I've been married for decades and whatnot, but
Right.
you're not giving them a chance to express themselves. Maybe that's
Right.
not, because what we hear and what was meant, two different things. What's said, what's heard, and what's implemented. Oh, we get lost in translation,
Absolutely.
even though we're all speaking the same language. But sometimes we're not. Even when we're speaking the
Absolutely.
English language, our tone and the words that we use
hmm
causes a defense. Yes, we can be sensitive, but we're sensitive because we are charged so much that we
Yeah.
perk up on the certain words that are used. So let's
hmm
learn to relax and calm
hmm
down our nervous system, which is always on high alert,
Yep.
to calm it down so that we can actually hear what was said, and we can ask for clarity if we have a visceral response to it.
hmm
Because our body does react. We've taught our body to react.
Yes. It's very much on autopilot.
Exactly.
Yes. And I love the word that you used, clarity, because that really
Mhm.
truly is. If we slow down enough to be curious to get clarity, we will always be able to navigate anything, except for when we go back into our autopilot and just, respond from reaction. So I'm going to put everything, all of your links, everything, social media, website, etc., on the show notes. And I just want to ask one question. If it's a couple and they're not in your location, they can't come to your love seat, will you do it virtually?
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking. I want to make sure somebody, if they're having that question and I didn't ask it, then there you go. So I just really love and enjoy everything that you have shared today, because this is such a deep topic and such a hidden topic. And it's so important to bring all of these conversations that we don't speak about in daily conversation and put some sunlight disinfectant on them. So I really appreciate that. And so I just want to ask you, I ask my guests, what is your best wisdom for 2026 to any woman or man that's out, mostly women here, to any woman that's out there that may be navigating something that they're not even sure that this is what it is. And yet there is an insight or an intuition that's calling them in a different way. What is the best wisdom that you could share with them right now?
It's really two words. And it came to me pretty much right at the beginning of the year for me, and I share it with a lot of my clients, and there's resistance initially, but when they absorb it, they're grateful for it. I know I'm grateful for it. Slow down.
Mhm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just slow down.
I think that
It'll
should
all
just be the
happen.
words for the planet right now, really.
Mm.
I mean, it really, we have reached this escalation of energetic um, uh, dysregulation of our nervous system beyond anything that's reasonable. And so I take that. I want to leave us with that beautiful concept of slow. I'm going to say down because it's so beautiful and it is so potent and it is so easy, or it should be. So, thank you again so much, Vanessa, for being my guest today and giving your time to us. And as I said, everything will be in the show notes so people can contact you directly. I appreciate it so much.
I appreciate you, Debbie. Thank you so much.